everyone, welcome back to Hannah Worldwide and Friends, the podcast about living abroad. If you live abroad or you love to travel or you are interested in different countries and cultures, this podcast is for you. Also, if you always wanted to live abroad but you haven't found the courage yet, this podcast might help you out. Just follow me on Instagram or hit the bell button on Spotify to get updated on new episodes. Hi everyone, please welcome with me Annemarie Ciampaglia, or Annie, from Massachusetts, US. Annie has been growing up in America and decided with 22 years to go on an adventure. She moved to New Zealand by herself and is living here for the past 5 years now. We have been working together at Analytica Laboratories, but Annie moved on to a new company while I stayed for another 6 months, only to follow her around, and we now work together again as close colleagues. Welcome, Annie.
Hi, Hannah.
Nice to have you here.
Happy to be here. This is exciting.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Annie, exciting. What made you leave America and come to New Zealand, and why did you choose to go to New Zealand?
So coming to New Zealand was pretty much just a situation that fell into my lap. When I was a junior, so my second to last year at university, I had a very lucky message from my cousin Lauren, from a lovely girl named Kieran from New Zealand. So they had worked together at Camp America, which is a big thing, obviously, in New Zealand and Australia. So people go and they work at the summer camps in America for a summer. And so it's a lot of international people as well as Americans working there. And so my cousin met a bunch of Kiwis and people from all over at this camp. And years later, she received a message from a Kiwi. I'm ad-libbing of what it said. I can't exactly remember exactly what it was, but something along the lines of that her family owned a racehorse farm in New Zealand. They were looking for international people to come work on a farm. They were looking for riders, horseback riders, because her and my cousin had worked at the horseback riding part of the camp. And my cousin replied and said she was settled in Boston, but that her cousin, me, was potentially would be interested. So my cousin sent me this letter or this email, whatever it was, I can't remember. And I thought, well, opportunities like that don't come once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had tried to study abroad in Ireland, and it hadn't worked out. So I knew that after graduation, I really wanted to travel. And obviously with visas and traveling, it takes a bit of an effort. So when something falls into your lap like that, you kind of I was really going to run with it. And I was pumped to not have to think too much about what I was doing after graduation. Like everyone else was so worried about what job they were doing, and I kind of had it in my mind. I was going to run away and pretend to not be an adult for a while. So it was a really good, kind of easy thing to fall into. Going to a foreign country and having a base, some sort of connection is everything. It makes the transition so much easier. So that family was my base starting out, and I'm so thankful to have had them. And it was, a great opportunity. So I went there and I rode, and we trained racehorses at the beach, and it was fantastic.
Wow.
And it was a fantastic home base. They helped me with everything. They helped me set up everything, bank accounts. They had dealt with international people before. So, super grateful to have had that connection, because not everyone is that lucky. A lot of people have to come in blind. But so it was just a fluke to end up at New Zealand. And
that's so cool, especially knowing that you really love horse riding.
Yeah.
So really cool.
Yeah, it was a really, really cool experience. So I lasted there 7 months before deciding to go on to something a bit different.
Yeah. I have never heard about Camp America, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, funny. I feel like everybody does that here. Whenever I talk to people, they go, we have a coworker who's done it. And I talked to a couple of people. Analytica had done it as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So a lot of times after Kiwis and Australians and a lot of English people as well, after they graduate high school, they will go and spend a summer, because visas in America are a bit difficult. They don't do a sort of like working holiday visa. Yeah. They don't do that kind of thing. So this is kind of the equivalent, I suppose.
Ah, right.
There's a certain amount of time they're allowed to come and work and travel. It's a short period, and then they go back. But a lot of people do it, kind of get out.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit on well, in a different way. But as you described, that it's really good to have like a already base to go to and people who look after you, and also people who help you setting up the bank account and everything which is needed in the country, which you sometimes are not even aware of.
Yes.
So in that case,
IRD number.
Yeah, exactly.
Which what do I do with KiwiSaver? Yeah, exactly. That kind of thing. Yeah. No, the little things you don't think of when you are going abroad.
It sounds a little bit like the same perks someone who is doing like an au pair year kind of has, because you then look after the children usually.
And the parents are, often helping you with that. That's what I did after. I went to Auckland and I was an au pair and a nanny. For
right. That's really cool.
Yeah. So that's kind of how it got, how it worked out that way. And after that, when I was still working at the farm, I had met my boyfriend, Dan, who I'm still with, and his family was on the North Shore of Auckland. And so on the weekends when I was driving up to Auckland to see him, I just fell in love with the city. And I had never lived in a city. Even my college or my university was very rural. So coming to Auckland, it was such a cool city vibe as well as being on the water, going to North Shore. And it was just so beautiful. And I thought it really would put me out of my comfort zone to be moving to a city. And I thought how cool that would be to live there for the first time in an urban environment, I suppose. And so, I took a au pair job on the North Shore and was next to the ocean, and it was really cool. And then I met a lot of other nannies from Germany, Scandinavia, Italy, and it was the first time I'd been around so many different cultures, and that was incredible.
Yeah, to be big learning opportunity, right?
Huge, and those girls are just so wonderful and kind, and a lot of Germans come over to be au pairs. They do. So that was just a really fun time.
Nice.
Yeah, and then real life hit, and visa issues come as they do, and I realized I had to think quick of what to do next. So it wasn't really an option. I knew that there was no way I was going to be leaving this country and not have the ability to come back and work.
Yeah.
So that was really scary. I had to figure out pretty quick on my feet what I was going to do. And so I did a couple things. So I left and I came back on a visitor visa, and I just held my ground for a couple of years, knowing that it would be worth it in the end, because we were planning on doing a partnership visa.
Yeah.
I didn't have the work credentials. I had graduated uni and didn't go into the workforce. So I couldn't go on because you did the skills shortage visa, or you were a special skill visa?
What was it? The skilled migrant visa.
Skilled migrant visa. But you had 10 years of work experience before. Yeah. So I came over quite unskilled.
I mean, you were still quite young as well.
I was. I was just 22, and a very green 22 at that. So very, very green 22. So so we decided we were going to go through with the partnership visa. Luckily in New Zealand and Australia, you don't need to marry for that visa. You just have to be in a real relationship, which is amazing.
Yeah.
You can't do that in America, and you can't do that in the UK, that's for sure.
Did you also have to prove, like, with all messages and photos?
It's invasive. Yeah. It's not crazy at all, but you do have to share messages between each other. You have to have notes from family and friends saying that this is a real relationship and things like that. It's a bit invasive. It's a lot of work to get together, but so worth it. So finally, I was a bit trapped between 2019 and then with COVID hitting. I was trapped in limbo. Couldn't work legally. It was scary, and I felt my career was halted. I was 24, had never worked in a proper adult job, and I was really worried about that. And then finally, emerging from COVID, I got a call on the North Shore from Promit that I had that I got hired at Analytica in Hamilton. So we moved to Hamilton to start at Analytica and start new jobs and get out of Auckland for a while. And that was 2021. Now we're still in Hamilton. The city of dreams, as they say. And it's 2023.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad it worked out that way. And coming back from what you said before, because I'm quite intrigued there as well, you said that you wanted to do some studies or go to Ireland.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So was that just an idea you always had when you were like studying in America, that you wanted to have like an overseas experience, or did you always feel like you want to get out and travel around, or What
Right.
was kind of the motor behind that idea of going abroad to
Right.
Ireland first, and then when it didn't work out and the opportunity came
Right.
up to come over to New Zealand?
The motive is so embarrassing. So I don't know if you had this in Germany. Do you remember Tumblr? The website Tumblr. It was like the.
It's like a dating app as well,
No,
right?
it's not.
No? Sorry. I thought with all these apps.
That's Tinder.
No, there are a couple of
Is there other
others.
ones? No,
Sorry.
Tumblr was really big. It was when I was probably 13. It became big, and it was just another social media thing. I suppose social media thing
Right.
that shared pictures, and this was pre-Instagram and stuff. It was a bunch of people from around the world, and they showed pictures basically in videos.
Yeah.
And I was on that from 12 all the way through high school. And it really, my mom always said that from the age of 12, I said I was going to leave America. And I think it wasn't out of hatred for the country at all. It was just out of wanting to get out of my small town. I just wanted adventure.
Yeah.
That's all it was. Simple
To
as that.
explore
To
the
explore.
world.
And with my degree, I found it very difficult to balance trying to get overseas on a study abroad because I didn't want to be doing any difficult classes while abroad. I was trying to save my electives because
Yeah.
I didn't want to be doing chemistry abroad. It was tough enough for me to get a science degree. I didn't want to do anything too tough while in a foreign country. And just the way the classes worked out, it just didn't end up happening. But I had always wanted to go to Ireland. I had a few people that studied abroad there. And I had a friend who did something with dairy cows
Yeah.
in Ireland. I knew they did some sort of working holiday visa. So that's why I was set on Ireland. I knew someone that had already done it. It was pretty close. It just, I don't know what attracted me there. But when that opportunity with New Zealand fell in my lap, I mean, training racehorses on the beach in New Zealand,
Hello.
I know. How do you say no to that? It was too good to be true. And the whole experience was too good to be true. It was just unbelievable. It was such an incredible experience.
Yeah.
It felt like a fever dream the entire time. It was amazing. Really, really incredible experience that I'll remember my whole life. So, yeah, it was just incredible. So it didn't really matter to me where I went. I just wanted out.
Yeah, just somewhere
out
far
somewhere,
away. Yeah.
somewhere far away.
Yeah. And I feel like, I'm a strong believer that what's meant to be for you,
Everything
it will
happens
happen.
for a reason, and fate and stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah, and who knows why Ireland wasn't working out, and then New Zealand was the one country which
That did.
just come up.
Yeah. Funny how things happen, right?
Yeah, because I remember I wanted to go. I felt that strong feeling of, okay, I need to go. But I also didn't really say I need to go to this country.
Right. I need to go to New Zealand. It's just, you get that
Yeah.
feeling inside you of,
you need to go
you need to
somewhere.
run. You need to run. And if you don't act upon it, I know some people that feel that way in America. And if you don't act upon it, I feel like it just sits with you.
Oh, yeah.
And you
it
always
never goes away, really.
It doesn't go away. And you sit on it and you sit on it and you go, what would have happened? What would have happened?
Oh, yeah.
So I always, you can always go back, right?
Yeah.
If things don't work out, you can always go back. And I think I didn't have a lot of fear coming here because I always thought, things go bad, I literally book a flight
back
home.
home.
It's not the end of the world, and I feel privileged to be able to say that. A lot of people can't when they immigrate or they leave their home country. They don't. They're leaving for a reason. They're escaping something, whether it's a better life or something, a bit harsher than that. So I feel lucky that it's been my decision, but it's also tough because I love my home country, and I didn't escape it because of, like I said, like I hated it. I do love it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
pros
I
and
feel
cons
the
to
same
that.
way.
Yeah, exactly. You
Yeah.
love Germany and you love parts of Germany, but
that wasn't the reason.
that wasn't the
really-
reason you left. You weren't,
Yeah. The adventure, as you said.
The adventure, and it leads to
Exactly.
other things, and then your
Yeah.
heart is always in two different places, isn't it?
Oh, so true.
It is. We've talked about that quite a bit in length, haven't we?
Oh, yeah. And it's probably also a really good thing to bring up here,
Mm-hmm.
especially where it's all about living abroad and how it feels and the experience. But I remember I had the opportunity, or I thought I would have the opportunity to maybe go with a friend to Miami. And then somehow it didn't work out.
Were you going to work there?
Yeah, I would have worked there.
Really?
Because she was part of a company in Germany who would travel around quite a bit to sell product.
Cool.
And kind of go, it's also science. And she was supposed to set a new branch up in Miami. What? somewhere in America, but then she wanted to do Miami, but then it didn't work out because of family things going on. So that didn't work out for me then.
It's a sign, right?
Exactly. And then there was another opportunity with a cousin of a friend who was a doctor working in Australia. And I was in contact with him, and he was like, oh yeah, maybe we can have a position. But then somehow this didn't work out. And then he went back to, I don't know where he went, Denmark or Sweden or somewhere. And so this didn't work out. And then New Zealand was the one thing where just everything worked out fine. So
things happen for a reason.
Exactly. So that's why I feel like, okay, it's not Ireland, but it's New Zealand.
Right.
So
I think you ended up ending up in New Zealand instead of Miami. I will say that, but to each their own.
I've heard when I traveled to Miami once when I was 21, I was just freshly 21. So I was happy that I was an adult in the eyes of Americans.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
And I went with 2 other girlfriends. And we got told quite a lot that we need to be really careful. So
yes,
just in general, Miami being like quite dangerous in general, and also for women, and especially at night. So
absolutely. And I think we've talked about this subject as well a few times, is the pros and cons of where you live in the world, and you make your non-negotiables of where you live. There's always pros and cons. There's always danger levels. It's what you consider the most important in your day-to-day life. Work-life balance, safety, I suppose. In terms of some people enjoy cities no matter what. People love New York City. Well, what level of, you know what I mean? Some people would say, it's too unsafe for me, and some people say, that's not my main concern. I love New York City for what it is.
Yeah.
Cities can be dangerous, doesn't matter what city. Every city has its dangers. So it's, you do your pros and cons out. And I think both of us have really enjoyed the work-life balance of New Zealand, which seems to have a bit more flexibility than America and Germany sometimes, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
A bit more laid back in the workplace, isn't it?
It feels like it. In general, I feel like, sometimes I think it depends on the company. Some places I feel like still are having a high priority on like to be competent and to work hard, and there's nothing wrong with working hard, but I think generally speaking, they are really looking after that they also have a life and that they don't just destroy themselves. So
they work to live, they don't live to work here. And as much as there's some difficult things to grasp with that, I do feel like in terms of mental health, it is a completely different playing field than in America. From a very young age, I found it very evident how stressful the work-life balance is, starting from when you get your first job at 16. It is an enormous amount of pressure, and I didn't realize how enormous it was until I left the country. And thinking back, it just seems so insane how much that pressure was. And thinking back of the jobs I was doing, I think, it's like, what was the pressure for? That was just a waitress job. Or it was, you know what I mean? It was just, the pressure was so extreme. What does that do for your health long term to be under that kind of pressure? And watching my friends and family, even after school, go into their first jobs, and how everything has progressed as we've gotten older, and seeing pressures that they've been under. And it's just interesting to watch everything, almost watching it from a looking glass from somewhere else. It's very interesting. And then you think, what would have happened to me if I had been in that cycle all along? But I can't picture it. It's not even there. I can't even imagine what my life would have been like. So it's interesting.
I try sometimes to picture myself, what if I wouldn't have gone to New Zealand and just stayed in my last job as well. And I did enjoy my job, definitely, no question. But I think it would be the same over and over again. And it's all about performing, and it's all about money performing. And sometimes people try to bring back like a work-life balance, especially with the numbers of mental health issues skyrocketing. And it's just insane. Like, people now slowly start to understand where the illness comes from sometimes, and also just looking after high stress situations and jobs. And so we'll see if there will be a change in the future. But what I actually miss from Germany, which we don't have here, is that I used to have 30 days of annual leave.
Wild.
And here in New Zealand, having 20 is actually making such a big difference.
It's 4 weeks.
Yeah. So it's 4 weeks in New Zealand and it's 6 weeks in Germany. So that difference of the 2 weeks extra.
Funny. But you say 20 days. Wouldn't it be 28 days?
Well, you don't count the weekends.
Oh, because you're
right?
not counting the weekends.
Yeah.
So if you're going off the
just
work
20
days,
working days.
I never think of it that way. I always just say 4 weeks, but you're right.
Yeah, it's 4 weeks and it's 6 weeks back home.
That is so funny. I've never heard anyone complain about the days off that you get in New Zealand, because I just feel like we have
days
so
off all the
many
time.
days off.
I think
You get 6 weeks in Germany. And is it encouraged to be taken off? Like, you're encouraged to take it. Because in America, you have, like, nothing. And it's almost sometimes frowned upon to take those days off in general.
No, they are pretty good, I would say.
Yeah.
Like, they want you to take it as well.
That's wild. And incredible.
Yeah, sometimes you're not even allowed to carry it over into the next year.
You have to use it. Wow.
Yeah. So
that's how life should be, right?
I think so. That's why I was also very surprised. Like, no matter how stressful it could be, but I was always able to take my annual leave. And I really appreciated it because I'm a big fan of traveling. So that
it
was
gives
really
you that
helpful.
time that, 6 weeks, that's huge.
Yeah. And that's probably because coming from that, going to 20 days, and being international, you want to use your time to visit your family every now and then, but then you wouldn't go less than 4 weeks because the flight is already so long and painful. So you pretty much use your whole annual leave
That's right.
for 1 year for just one
visit.
vacation.
Yeah, it's tough. It doesn't,
And so that's
my American friends, like my family or friends that come here, they're like, I've got 8 days to come and visit you. And I'm like, well, it takes 48 hours to pretty much get here. So enjoy your 5 days in New Zealand. So, it's that the thought of taking that amount, it's so normal for us in Europe and in the South Pacific to take that kind of time off to vacation. But that is just, it's not even heard of in America to take that kind of time off.
Which is crazy. I mean,
it is crazy.
A lot of Asian countries we know have also really little annual leave, working really, really hard. So I know that I was probably spoiled in that regard.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think it gets much better than that.
Yeah. But once you have it, you don't really want to miss it.
It's hard. Yeah, no. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think you will go back to America, or do you feel like the world is your home now?
That's a good way of putting it. I am a firm believer in, I don't want to ever say never.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that stop me from ever moving back, one of them being the work-life balance. But I mean, things are changing there. Millennial companies coming out, giving the whole, what do they call it? Endless annual leave, whatever. I can't even think of the words that they use for it now. So new companies coming out are trying to change that kind of balance. So who knows? There's been a lot of pressure, I feel like, as American expats to renounce their citizenship because there's so many obligations to America that are very unfair and that no other country does.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pressure when you leave to renounce, a lot of pressure, and some people do so willingly, but I don't think I ever will. It would be too difficult for me emotionally. I mean, I do feel still very connected to the country, but that's not saying that I don't feel very pressured to because of how much America pushes you away once you leave. It's a terrible feeling. Tax obligations and things like that, they really pull you in. So I would go back, but it would have to be the absolute perfect situation because I am more than happy I want to live in different places.
Yeah.
Before that would ever happen. If it did happen, it would be a long time in the future.
So what you said is that they make it really hard once you've left to come back?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
As a lawyer once said to me, she said, you have to be very careful because the arms of America stretch extremely long. And that is so true. So you have to be extreme. It's unfair for me to call America a cult, but I do sometimes joke and call it a cult. When you leave, there's only 2 countries in the world that require it, but you are tax obligated to America. There's only one other country, and it's an northeastern African country that require this. And I have to file taxes every year to America, and then after I earn a certain amount of money, I'm double taxed.
Wow.
It's insane, and people have been trying to change it for a while. Saving for retirement is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
You have to be tax compliant. You can get in trouble. There's something called an F-bar. If you make over, literally, it's like $10,000 US. It's not a lot of money. They need to know that you need to report all of your money to America, whether I have anything to do with them or not right now. You know, it's
wow.
It's crazy. Yeah.
You currently pay tax here and in America.
Because I'm not over the threshold, I'm not double taxed.
Okay.
But I do file to them, so they need to know what I make here. Oh, so they always have tabs on their expats that live overseas. And that's the case even if I had a child. They're considered an accidental American, even if they've never stepped foot in America. There's they can either I don't know the exact rules of it. I'm still learning about it myself, but there is a lot of a hindrance to it. It's pretty intense, and things can go poorly if you do not, do it correctly. You have to pay a lot of money to get accountants involved that are internationally specialized in this. Yeah. They have to know both the countries' tax rules. It's a big business, and it's very expensive to be compliant. And that's stressful. It's very stressful. My situation is so simple right now, but you get a house involved if you start a family, if you move countries again, retirement, investing, it gets so complex, and it's like a system set up for you to fail, and it's really disheartening sometimes. And those are the times where you think, well, if I had citizenship here, it's just easier to renounce. I can understand why Americans feel such pressure to renounce their citizenship. It makes you resent your country for what they do to you in that regard. But it's not fair. But it is what it is, and you just deal with it. And I still think the pros outweigh the cons in terms of living abroad. I'm much happier and feel more free abroad. I do, and my career options are a lot better and something I'm more interested in abroad. It really works out for me, and it has worked out. But I feel like I've created it to work out. It wasn't a walk in the park, but it's exactly how I had wanted it to work out. Yeah. So I feel really happy about that.
If you would get citizenship in New Zealand, would they take away your... I don't even know how to say, and if that's even possible.
No, you can have dual citizenship.
Yeah. Okay. You
can have dual. I think you can have 3 as well. I know some countries do that, what you're talking about, where you can only have 1. Luckily, that's not something they do, or else that would certainly make another complexity of it.
I actually just informed myself about dual citizenship for Germany myself, because...
They have more tricky rules about it, don't they?
Well, I just read the other day, and I'm not too informed yet, but it sounded like you are able to apply for dual citizenship, but you then have to prove that it is still a benefit for you in the country to be a citizen of Germany. So if I now apply for dual citizenship, they want evidence like that I still have all my friends and family, or a flat, or
something,
a house, or whatever in Germany, that there is any kind of benefit. Otherwise, why would I need 2?
See, in my head, I think of that, and I shouldn't say the word cultish, but it just seems like, how is that anyone's business, Yeah. I just think it's just not fair, I don't think. And, obviously there's a lot of very complex issues and things that come with having citizenship. I totally understand that, but the fact that each country is so individual, and some things they make so ridiculously harsh that you seem as unfair, whereas another country doesn't care about that, but they're harsh about something else that seems unfair. Yeah. It's like these weird exclusive clubs, and you're just trying to live a life. Yeah. So it can, And it's so complex, isn't it? Visas are complex. Everything's complex when it comes to living abroad. But most people that we talk to, there's a lot of immigrants in New Zealand. I think it's 1/3 of the population is foreign born. Yeah. It's always worth it.
Yeah. I actually sometimes wonder, or that's what I think, and I haven't done my proper research, but it feels like it used to be more of a, you have to escape from a difficult or dangerous situation in country.
And for a better life.
Exactly.
For freedom. Yeah.
So that was way more common. And what we do now, that we say, oh, we just want an adventure, and we just feel like...
What a privileged spot to be in, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like that's more common now, but
is.
it wasn't before.
Yes.
And so the rules and the criteria about like migration laws and stuff, they are pretty set to standards. And I think it's not as open as the minds of the young people are now, if that makes sense.
It's a totally new movement, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel like most people are now just like,
I want to move because I'd be happier. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, and I feel like it, and I really
feel
just
like it.
want
Yeah,
to do
exactly.
it. Yeah,
exactly. But the rules of the restrictions of the countries are more set towards there must be a specific reason you're coming in. We need to know why. It just
feels like really holding on to old standards.
It is. And I understand it in a way. I really do. I can understand the limitations, but that doesn't make it any less frustrating.
Absolutely, yeah.
You understand what they do, and I totally get why New Zealand is now getting stricter. It feels almost like New Zealand was a mecca that now the world has discovered. Yeah. So now they can't keep up with the population influx, and what a strange situation for a country to be in. It's almost like everyone's just discovered New Zealand at the same time, and everyone's like, well, I want to live there. And Auckland's not built for that, right? They've got the public transportation, everything. They're not built for this sort of huge immigration that could be coming in. It's wild. It almost seems like a second America, when, all the immigrants came over.
Years and years
back. But America had more land to move to. We're just two little floating islands.
Yeah,
so,
I do understand every country who is trying to protect their own things.
Yes.
So totally get it.
Totally get it. Absolutely. Respect.
Yeah. Since we have had many conversations before already, because it's just so interesting to hear other people talk about their story of moving abroad and all of that, we also talked about your family history. And as your name says, your ancestors are actually from Italy.
Yes, some of them. Yes. So as with a majority of Americans, it's pretty much a melting pot at this point.
Yeah.
It's so much immigration has happened to America that everyone is just so mixed. It's an incredible mixture of culture, which is amazing and sometimes sad in a way, because we're at the point where we have lost a lot of our traditions.
Yeah.
Our ancestors came over, and obviously there's American customs and traditions, but it's not the same. People say, if you meet someone with the last name O'Malley, it's like, yeah, my ancestors came from Ireland, but they're not doing anything of the Irish ancestor. Yeah. You know what I mean? So they come from these countries, but a lot of times you lose those traditions.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've been trying to reconnect with, because I absolutely love ancestry and genealogy. And I kind of viewed it as a way of, well, I want to live in different parts of the world. I want to explore different parts of the world. What does this mean for me? And so with the Italian immigrants that came to America, they came for a better life. They're from a very poor background in Italy, from the Abruzzo region. So they came for a better life. They came, my great-grandfather his father came and worked on a dam and saved enough money to bring his family over. That whole, you work and work and work to bring your family over for a better life type of deal. But that being said, if I'm applicable for Italian citizenship, so I'm seeing it almost as a path of, if I did gain Italian citizenship as well, that's another route, another opportunity in my eyes, as, well, that makes life easier if I move to Europe, so I consider it as kind of that kind of thing, which is kind of funny to think about in a way. My family worked so hard to get out of Italy. And I'm like, I wonder if I could use that to get back to Italy. So it is funny to think of the differences with how your ancestors have immigrated and what reasons they immigrated for.
Yeah.
And I was 22 going, I just want to go have fun. That's why I left my, cozy home life. I went for an adventure. So part of me feels a bit of guilt in that way,
I totally
They had
get
hardship. My ancestors had hardship to come over, and they made such a great life in America. And New England is an incredible place to grow up. Absolutely loved it. Loved where I went to college. Loved everything. So it is interesting to think of how different our immigration stories would have been.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, mine would have been a lot easier, I'm sure, than theirs would have been. As much as we talk about the hardships of being an expat, I do think of ancestry and how different the situation would be. The similarities and the differences between the two, as I'm sure everyone thinks of when they do move countries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found the whole history of ancestry and stuff also really interesting. So I always think about, I think my grandparents came from Slovenia.
That's where I thought you were from originally. I always thought you looked Ukrainian or, Eastern European, yeah.
I honestly, because a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think I'm from Germany because their idea of how German people look like is different. And I think they also have that idea of blonde and blue eyes. Which is actually not that common in Germany anymore. So
I'm sure.
It's more like Sweden.
Scandinavia.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I also met once someone from Indonesia who thought I must have Asian roots because of my hair being so dark. So it's really interesting. But I did a DNA test because I was like always intrigued by it. And so my constellation is actually quite a lot of different areas, but mainly North Europe and Middle Europe and Eastern Europe. So definitely also like the Ukrainian, Czech Republic, like this kind of region.
Yeah, I could see that, absolutely.
Where people usually would think I'm from. So really interesting to
a lot more mixes in Europe than there used to be as well. Yeah, a lot of more people that, same thing as Americans, more of a melting pot now, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And they were also running from war.
Yeah.
Trying to find a safe
Of course. People would cross borders, yeah.
Exactly. So in that case, I think the whole idea about immigrants, like you would find probably the occasional one who just left because of this sense of adventure and the heart is free and mind is free and just wants to get out and see the world. But most of them were probably just escaping from war and horrible other things going on in their countries. So
probably didn't choose to leave on their own regard.
Yeah. So I do understand how you feel with like saying that you feel a little bit guilty sometimes because I remember Karim, he is from Iraq and he told me like, okay, what's your reason? Why did you leave Germany? I mean, Germany is such a comfortable and developed and great country. Yeah. And so I felt quite guilty saying I just
wanted some fun.
I just wanted to get
adventure.
An adventure. So.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Absolutely, but that guilt is going to come. It's just part of it, part of the game, right?
Yeah.
Just like there's so many wonderful people from South Africa that are now, which I don't think a lot of people know about how common it is for South Africans to move to New Zealand. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And then I moved, to Browns Bay, and I was like, every single person here is South African. What is going on? I had no idea that it was such a thing.
Yeah.
And you talk to a lot of South Africans, and of course they love their country, and they go, I just did not feel safe anymore.
Yeah.
I wanted something safer for my family. And that's heartbreaking to hear. That's heartbreaking to hear. Obviously, I feel that to an extent from America, not to the same extent. There's different things and political things that obviously I don't agree with America that I think a lot of U.S. expats would say is the reason they left.
Yeah.
It's not the reason I left, but I definitely agree with them, of the issues that are going on in the States and the safety issues and stuff like that. But it's definitely, it wasn't the moving force, I should say.
Yeah.
I wasn't scared for my safety, my family's safety, and so I left.
Yeah. I think it also depends on where you grow up, right? If you grow up in a really dangerous place, then you might know how to move, how to react, how to keep yourself safe.
It doesn't though, because when that's the thing that really got people trembling was when the shootings can be very random happen in America and on the college campuses, and it ended up not really mattering if you were from a dangerous spot or not dangerous spot.
Yeah.
Everybody is trained in school how you do a school shooting drill. It doesn't matter where you're at. We all did it. We all went through it. From my generation, you did the bombing practices, the shooting practices. Everyone's got a story to tell. There's always a local school that had a shooting. I mean, there's mass shooting every day or something crazy like that. They've had hundreds. Oh, God. So it's just one of those things that it's just part of life. It doesn't shock you anymore. And that once you become numb to something like that, it is just concerning. It is more than concerning. I don't even know what the word is for it. So obviously I'm at the age where when I left, it was all fun and games. Oh, yeah, some concerns. But once you get older and you see, especially having been a nanny, and I think of like a child's safety, I think, if I ever did decide to start a family, would I feel comfortable bringing
my child into that country?
Yes. When children here are 5 years old, barefoot, walking a mile to school by themselves, they don't worry about, they don't worry about that kind of thing, kidnapping, stuff like that. It's not a thing. Whereas it's such a concern in America, I could never, I'm not sure if I'd be able to raise a child in America, but it's, to each their own. It's just what you feel comfortable with. And if I had never left, I probably would have never even had that thought. Yeah. But because after watching all the kids here and how that's not a concern in their head, they don't even think about it. Yeah. How do you go back from that?
Yeah, especially having such a different aspect of laws for gun use. For me, coming from a country where the laws about guns are really harshly controlled.
Are they?
You wouldn't necessarily find any, I wouldn't know where to go. I mean, I'm a good girl. I wouldn't necessarily.
You don't know any local gun shops,
I would have no idea where I would get a gun from, and that's good. I don't want to know.
Go to Walmart, man.
That's the point where I was shocked. Everyone feels really shocked hearing about Americans with all the shootings, and that every random person can have a gun, and it's just normal. It's not normal for me, and I would never be able to imagine that, to be honest. And here in New Zealand, I think the laws also a little bit different because so many hunters are living here.
It's a different scenario. They did get stricter after the mosque shooting, and it's interesting. We're talking about this when it was the shooting this morning in Auckland.
Exactly.
I know, and more info will be coming out about that soon. But that was very, very interesting in the sense that he was on home arrest or something for domestic violence. I mean, I'm interested to hear more about that. Where did he get a gun? Was it illegal? Yeah. Was it gang related? Where did he receive a gun from? Because it's not easy to have a gun here. No, it
shouldn't be easy here to get a gun.
Yeah, but it is. You're right. It's a farming nation. Farmers have guns, and I support that. I completely support safe and responsible gun ownership. Yeah. I'm from a family who grew up with guns, grew up with a family of hunters, and I'm from a state with very strict gun rules. Yeah. So we've had, luckily, less instances in a lot of states, but it's hard to say what the correlation and things like that. It's just such a complex subject, and it's...
Yeah, and I think since the country...
Difficult.
It's not just for me, in my naive mind, I would think just have a law that you are not allowed to have a gun unless you are or you are a hunter, or you have another really valid reason to own a gun. But that's not possible, right?
Right. We've got the right to bear arms. We've got something in our Constitution. We've got different statewide government. It's so much more complex than that. Exactly. We have it written. People defend it. It's written into our history. What other country has something like that? And we've got 50 states that all have their own, basically 50 little countries, It's America's a complex place. Yeah. It's a country of extremes, and I love it. In some extent, I absolutely love that about it. And there's some things that I'll miss forever in my life regarding those extremes and things that it stands for and the people in it. And then there's some parts of America that are just so absolutely backwards and insane, and a lot of those things you don't realize until you leave. Yeah. And it's so hard to wrap your head around, something that you've been raised with your whole life, and then you leave and you go, what on earth was going on there? How could we have ever thought that was normal?
Yeah.
A lot of times it's Kiwis that told me that. You know, you say a story and they look at you like you're crazy. They're like, "What did you do growing up? That's insane. That sounds like communism."
Honestly, sometimes I feel like I'm, even with New Zealander, sometimes I'm like, what did you do?
Oh, with the Kiwis?
Yeah, just in general, there are also things for me where Germany is just so, I don't know, maybe it's just where I'm from and just my family and how I grew up, but it's just feeling like I had like a really safe and quiet and uneventful, in terms of scary things or whatever,
Same
life. And I just did what every child did, and just nothing really majorly interesting in a way. I don't even know how to put it, but coming to New Zealand and then you hear certain stories with, oh, my child did this, or I just let them run there and I just let them do this and we never lock the doors and whatever.
Oh, yeah.
It's like
relaxed to a fault. But then you have to think of it in a sense that I try to remember is that, am I judging it on like with an ethnocentric personality? You know, am I to be ethnocentric and to think, you know, my way is better because of how I'm reasoning with it? It's like, no, it's not better. It's just different. And I have to remind myself of that sometimes. Yeah. You know, it's so easy to come into a place and say, you know, with customer service and just go, you know, how hard is it to get a burger at McDonald's? You know, I've been waiting here for 20 minutes. And you just think, how insane is this? But you have to think of it as, how lucky am I to be in a place that doesn't...
takes their time.
That has... No, they don't... They're not stressed. They're relaxed. You have to look at it a different way.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just how you look at it.
I think generally not being judgmental.
Yeah, in general. Like especially when you're in a different culture that's not your own. It's not your place
to move around, you travel, you get to know new cultures, new countries, new people, and
you accept it for what it is.
Yeah, and you learn. I mean, you have your values, and if something really crosses the line, of course, you can say like, okay, no, that's not okay for me.
Absolutely.
But generally, you got out and you explore something new and just be open for it, right?
Right.
And as long as it's not dangerous and it doesn't hurt anyone, then enjoy.
I think that's the hardest part, is seeing those things like you were just talking about and thinking, you're just putting it together, you think, well, you couldn't do that where I'm from because that is dangerous type of thing. And that's hard to, the whole not locking the doors and everything is what I mean. You know, I couldn't do that at home. Not that I could do that in Hamilton. I've got like 10 padlocks on my car so no one steals it. 10 alarms. Please don't steal my car.
See, this is also like every country has their own things. Like I've never had so many incidents.
Yeah, the blue collar crime. It's the blue collar crime. Very high here. The petty crime.
That just
it's ridiculous.
Cars are stolen on a
it's crazy.
all the time.
But would you feel safe walking alone at night? Because I wouldn't. I go for runs at night all the time. Couldn't do that at home. I used to be, even as rural as I was at college and at home, I would, you can't, you know, there's no one around. You would never run alone at night. Still, I mean, one of the wealthiest towns in Massachusetts, a few towns over, very wealthy, beautiful town called Princeton. I mean, one of the girls, 27 years old, was going for a run, and this was a few years back, and she was murdered a mile from her home. It's just one of those things where no matter how safe that we think it is, it's still that violent crime was always there, always around the corner, always woven into it. You just never are completely at ease about it.
Yeah.
No matter what area you're in, you know, I never was at complete ease.
Yeah.
And here, I mean, I'd go running at midnight. I mean, it just doesn't, I'm more worried about my car than me.
It's true.
So, I mean, pros and cons, you know.
But what I was really surprised when I first came here, learning about the domestic violence, because that rate is really high here. So I feel like outside, as you say, I also feel really safe walking around. But hearing that the rates, like behind closed doors, that the domestic violence is really high.
I know, yeah. I didn't know that for a while either.
Yeah,
that was definitely something that I learned later on.
Yeah, where
Definitely
everyone
shocking.
has
And
a story
yeah.
about a neighbor or something.
Exactly. The suicide rates being so high, definitely, dark things that you learn the longer you stay. And yeah, it just makes you kind of sit down and go, what are my main things that I want that make me comfortable in life, that are my non-negotiables?
Yeah,
and you kind of list them out, and you just understand and take it with a grain of salt that every single city I go to, every town I'm in, every country I'm in is going to have its pros and cons, and I need to have my non-negotiables that stay with me no matter what country I'm in, no matter where I'm at, and I don't let those go. Whether it's, for me, safety is huge. I need to feel safe. Yeah. I cannot, I can't feel unsafe. I don't want that. I could never live in a really big, busy city because my safety concerns would just keep me up at night.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of people wouldn't say that. A lot of people would have different non-negotiables. So I need to really balance those out. And at this point, living by the ocean is a non-negotiable. I can't imagine not living by the ocean again, Yeah. So things like that you think, I'm not breaking on that. Work-life balance, yeah.
Yeah.
Having, fixed hours so that I can enjoy my off time, which before when I was in America, I'd be like, put me anywhere, I'll work anything, it doesn't matter to me. Now I'm like, nope, I need my downtime, I need my mental health time, I need to do things that rejuvenate me and make me me, and not just work. And I have found that balance here, and I love it, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I'm glad you like it here. And I do too. Sometimes I do think about a lot of things like family and friends, and it's hard because I love this country. It's making me feel like I'm home here as well. And so
you feel home in two different spots, so.
Yeah, because here the place is just so amazing as well.
Absolutely, in every regard.
People are really friendly. It just gives you like a homey feeling when you come.
It does.
Right?
Always.
Yeah. So once I arrive at the airport, I feel
it feels like home. It does. I know, it does.
But of course, also when I go back to see my family and friends, it feels like home. I know. And I miss them like crazy. I just wish it would be closer together. But
I know. I talk about that with my friends and family all the time. It absolutely kills me.
Me too. Like nearly every day, I know. Honestly.
Did you grow up watching Hannah Montana? Was that in Germany?
I actually did not watch it.
You didn't watch Hannah Montana?
I have to.
Do you know the concept of it?
I do, and I did.
Do you feel like that?
I have to admit, I did watch that movie which came out.
It's a fantastic movie, Hannah. There's no need to be ashamed of that. I'd probably watch it once a month. But that's how I always thought that me and you probably felt like. I always tell people this. You feel like Hannah Montana. Two different lives.
Yeah.
That are just as much you. This is so stupid to say.
But that's true.
It's so true. You are. When I go home, I'm like, when I go home to America, my life in New Zealand feels like a fever dream. I'm like, did I make that up? Is any of that real? It just feels like it's not even. It's like somewhere in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
I know it's real. I know it happened, but it fades away for a minute. And then, because everything feels so normal.
Yeah.
It's like coming up where I left off. My friends, 85% of my life. 85% of my friends are there. My whole family is there. Everything is there for me, it feels like. Yeah. And then here it's like my boyfriend, my job, and 15% of my friends are 20, whatever percentage I just said, of my friends is here. But it just feels like the majority of my life is there.
Yeah.
So, and then I come here and I'm like, when I tell people about America, I'm like, was that a fever dream? Did that happen? Thinking of memories of my childhood, and that almost seems like a dream at this point.
Yeah.
And
it's so
you dabble
between
reality.
That,
yeah, it's what's real. If we go to a third country, what happens?
Honestly,
do you get split into threes? I mean, it's
I think it will be hard because. How you say you feel split, I think you always leave a little piece of your heart in that country. And if you go to another country, you will never really lose New Zealand as well.
Right,
if I would think about moving maybe to a different country.
A piece of your heart stays everywhere.
Yeah, and
how poetic.
Part of your life was in New Zealand, or it is.
Absolutely.
But, and such a big part of your life was in America. So wherever you go, you kind of take that with you. But you are right. At one point, it feels like a little bit of a dream. Was it really real? Is it really? And then you need to call someone from that place to make sure it's actually happening.
True. I know. I look at my Snapchat of my friends, my childhood best friends in college, and they're ranting about something, and I'm like, it's real.
Yeah.
Their problems are real. Their life is real. It all is real. But yeah, sometimes you do feel like you just need to message them and go,
I remember I had this really horrible feeling when I first went back to Germany. And I feel so bad because I was like depressed. I had an amazing time here for 8 months or so. And I went back to visit a friend's wedding or join a friend's wedding and surprise her. And I went back to see my family. And knowing that I probably want to stay a little longer here, I was like, okay, it's a good time to go back and just see everyone. And I was so depressed because I had my new friends here and my work here and I loved the country. And I went back and it felt like something was missing. Like I wanted a part of New Zealand with me over there to not think it wasn't real.
Wow, isn't that so interesting?
It's so weird. I was so depressed. I felt so bad for all my friends and my mom.
Because you feel off.
Yeah, I was not getting used to it. And everything was just so different. And last year when I went back and Nick came with me.
It was a bit different.
It was so good. Because he was the part of New Zealand I took with me. Which made it real that it's there. And so... with him traveling back home, I don't know, somehow it made it one. Like,
I know what you mean.
My home or my life
full
in
circle.
Germany and my life here became one because now he knew my friends and he's part of that experience and he has seen where I grew up.
And you're like, he's real.
Yeah, he's real.
He's real.
And this is real. And he knows now my family. And when I'm here, he knows about what's over there. And so... he's currently a little bit my connection, but I agree, it's hard.
It is hard. It is hard. When I brought Dan over, Dan came for 2 weeks last year, I felt like when I watched him like walking around my childhood kitchen, it's like a ghost walking in my house, like, and he's cooking a meal in my childhood kitchen, and I go, I thought I imagined all of this. This is what it's, your head is just... mixing so many different memories and emotions all at once, and
making these connections.
Making the connections because you've lived two separate lives and now you're conjoining them.
Do you have sometimes when you see a person who is familiar to you but you don't really know where from, that you doubt yourself if you know that person from America or from New Zealand? I have that sometimes that I look, and then I even had that in Germany with the different cities. I moved different cities, and so sometimes when I saw a person. And it wasn't like a close friend or anyone I would have to be in contact frequently. My brain would be like, where have I seen you? Which part
of my life are you from?
Yeah. Oh. And now with moving countries, it made it even bigger. Now when I'm in Germany, I'm like, why does that person look so familiar? Where's that from?
Well, yeah, what country are you from? Who do you look like?
Did we see each other in New Zealand or here?
Right.
So somehow it makes it now even more complicated with the connections.
It's a lot of psychology in it. Yeah, it's complex. It's a lot of good emotions and scary emotions all at once. Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Annie. I know we could go on and on because it's just so
we talk every day about this.
And I'm sure on Teams. Probably at one point I just invite you back and we talk more because I'm sure we will find even more exciting topics. But for now, I'm really, really grateful for your time. And I end the episode always with my quick 3 questions, which means usually it's just one word or one sentence. So pretty much just like intuitive.
Okay.
Go for it. Here are your 3 questions. Number 1, if you would leave New Zealand, which country could you imagine living in?
Australia or Ireland.
Cool.
Australia, just because it's so accessible in the most ridiculous ways. It's so easy for us to get there. And Ireland, just because I've been saying that for so long now.
I would come with you maybe because I remember I went to Ireland once to visit a friend who was working there for a little bit.
magical, isn't it?
It was
It's
so
like mystical.
nice.
I know.
Mystical, the landscape as well.
To be fair, New Zealand's a lot like Ireland, but
I
without
know.
the castle.
And closer.
I know.
So yeah, Ireland, I would join you.
Join me.
What do you miss the most about your home, like in America?
I wish I had a less basic answer, but just family and friends.
Yeah.
You know,
fair
I could say a million things, but family and friends would be.
Always number one.
Yeah. How could it not be? You know,
Yeah.
they're all there.
Same. And last question, number 3. What do you love the most about New Zealand?
Good question. I don't think I remember seeing that one. What do I love the most about New Zealand? 2 things. Probably one being I always feel like I live in Narnia. And I love that. It's almost this childlike wonder that I feel. Not in Hamilton. You know, once you step out
Around on the ocean.
Once I'm walking down Ulster Street, it's just magical. No. No, but anywhere else, you know, you go north or south, it's like it is a movie scene. It's where a lot of movies come to film.
Yeah.
It's just this wonder, this unbelievable sense of nature that where else in the world do you find something like that outside your doorstep? And I appreciate that to my core. And the second thing that I love most about New Zealand is how welcoming it's been. I've always felt so welcomed here.
Yeah.
I've never not felt welcomed here. No matter where I've stepped, it has just felt so inclusive and loving. And, you know, Dan's family has just taken me in, and I just feel like different friends have just taken me in. I've met international people so easily that we've all just come to each other.
Yeah.
It was never a struggle in that sense. It has always fallen into place easily, and I'm so grateful for that. So definitely those 2 things.
Awesome. Thank you. It's a great answer. It makes me feel the same way as well.
Right.
So, and when you said about the magic and the wonder, I was a little bit like, maybe that's where our Christmas magic comes from as well, just because I also feel like this childish wonder.
You're always searching for that, I feel like, as an adult.
Yeah.
You're looking for something that makes you feel that feeling again. For us, we always
Magic.
talk about Christmas, but...
Yeah, just generally having that feeling of magic.
Right.
I think...
Something that takes your breath away a bit.
Yeah, you don't have to miss out on that just because you're an adult now. You can find magic in the small things.
Absolutely. And it's easier to find in New Zealand, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me, Hannah.
Thank you so much,
It's been wonderful to be
Annie.
here.
It
See you tomorrow at work.
great. Exactly. Thank you so much, Annie. It was a pleasure as always. And I hope at one point we have that again. And I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. And I will see and hear you soon. Bye.